So I thought that was great, and I thought it was really, I liked the honesty and openness of it all, and the ability to just have that ability to just talk quite freely as well. And I think it came out that Stefan was great with sort of just coaching and just talking about stuff and allowing someone to reflect and have a heart to heart with him as well, but also being able to provide some next steps, how it could develop their practice, how they could go forward from this. Just some questions to the audience. What did you find went good? What could have been slightly improved? Could you recommend anything else from your guys' perspective? Don't be shy, there's no wrong answer here. Yep, absolutely.
I think it was a relaxed environment.
Yep.
I felt that she could talk openly to him.
Yes.
She didn't come across as nervous. It seemed, what's the word?
Organic?
Without it being serious, a bit like, I suppose when you meet someone that you've never met before and you're just kind of just having a chat, but it's not a chat as such, it's the content of what she was saying, and then he picked up on some areas where she said, you know, this is the part of it that I'm not used to, and then obviously there was an open discussion around the issue around the paramedic, and then that gave him an opportunity to kind of reassure her.
Yeah. Any other suggestions? I think there's another one here.
So just to add, the whole point of the revalidation peer-to-peer is it needs to have that organic feel. So, and that's the great thing about having networks, and PCP are really, really good at that. And that's how we've met, really, through networking and going to events and just going, oh, you know, you understand what I do, and you understand the difficulties in day-to-day practice, and actually it's really comfortable and reassuring that you've got peers available to you. And I'm fully aware that what I do for the next, 50 miles, there isn't really anybody that does what I do. So actually, even though Stephen's in London and in acute set, we've got a mutual understanding of actually what good practice is. And we're constant, this is an example of what we're like, but we're like this all the time whenever we catch up. Because actually what we do in practice is very grey, and it will be very grey in general practice. And there's probably going to be situations in community pharmacy where it's very grey. And a lot of people are working in isolation, but through networking, I would say there's industry pharmacists that I've got to meet. But because we work collaboratively, I know what good practice for them looks like. And I'm quite happy to peer review their practice and how they come across at a CCG meeting, how they've been able to conduct themselves as a healthcare professional. And that's why I think the whole purpose of networking is so invaluable. Go to your local groups, network with your local RPS groups and things like that. There's just so much out there, and rather than being quite insular, the whole GPHC revalidation, I think, will open up you as a professional, and it might make you feel quite vulnerable, but there's a really enriched learning from it.
Yeah. So, mate, how was that from a GPAC perspective?
Yeah,
you know?
No, it was really good. A couple of things that come to mind, just observations I make about peer discussions as I've had them and as I see them happening. First of all, they start off a little bit awkward. That's okay. It's all right to feel a bit unsure about how it is you're going to do this. You've got to open up. The conversation will tend to be more on your side if you're the person who's subject to the peer discussion. The peer will do much more listening, and the peer will ask many more questions, and they'll be targeted on things. Really like the way that the questions were around were there things that made you feel uncomfortable. Because quite a lot of you are going to have gut instincts about why it is something wasn't working, but you don't explore them until somebody goes, why was that an uncomfortable experience? And then you'll break those down, and you'll understand a lot more about what's going on in there. And also the other thing is as well, is to think about this one, is it starts off around one particular incident, but then it becomes about your practice as a whole. Because here we're talking about how you actually, on a consistent basis, might respond to something that's a bit more emergency in their nature, and how this idea of a debrief afterwards might not be something that's currently common practice in your environment, but it might be something that you go on to take and apply. And that might sound like a small change, but it might, over time, become cumulative and be something that actually happens and has a bigger impact across more of the system and sector. As I say, these aren't necessarily you as an individual changing pharmacy forever, but they are the little steps that you all take collectively that does that.
I think interesting as well, I would be the one that's expected to record as well and make notes. I'm not taking pen and paper, but I would be expected to make notes and add that into my record as well. So Stephen would be potentially contacted by GPHC just to reaffirm that actually he did conduct the peer-to-peer review, should he be contacted by GPHC, but it'd be up to me to record the details and stuff that I want to take away from a PDP point of view as well, and maybe take to my employer.
There's a question over there.
Yeah, you mentioned that it doesn't have to be a pharmacist.
Yes.
If, for example, if it's a GP,
Yeah.
I understand they have a similar revalidation concept. So is our concept and the process similar to theirs? And in so, would they know where we're coming from?
They will understand the principles, but their system is different in that they actually require there to be a kind of written statement by peers as part of the evidence that they collect. Whereas actually we ask for the conversation, the relationship, to be evidenced by the pharmacy professional rather than that person. But they understand the purpose of speaking to other colleagues and collecting information and evidence about the impact of your work, so they will understand that. But they might just ask for a bit of reciprocal work with you filling in a piece of feedback for them as a result.
I say do a trade. say you're going to do all the audits for a year and then give you the peer review.
I'd also just double check that the GP understands the pharmacist role, and just be absolutely transparent over it. It's me as a pharmacist, rather than the expectations that they have that they're matching against in a review setting. That's the only thing tricky.
Yeah, because GP appraisal will be slightly different to a pharmacist peer-to-peer discussion, and different type of questions, a different type of context. So making sure that they're aware. You know, the GPHC resources are they're not long at all actually, they're quite useful. So for a peer, there's like a good PDF document online that you can give to them prior to them to read. It's only 4 pages. It's not information heavy either, which could be useful to help steer some of those conversations prior to it as well. But I think that's what Osama and Helen showed, was they led a lot of the conversation, and that what should be happening even with the GP or with any other healthcare. Lead the conversation, they will likely reflect on it and ask you lots of questions as well, which could help it. Sorry, there's another question.
I mean, funny, I quite enjoyed that, but these are the sort of conversations sometimes, when I work in academia, I'm an academic pharmacist, but I also practice. But we often have these sort of informal discussions at time of appraisal.
Yeah.
Because some of our appraisals are quite informal. Would that be counted? Could that be counted?
So we've been very clear in our guidance that they are 2 different functions, appraisal and the peer discussion. That means that they can probably be timed around the same time, but probably still need to be given their own space within that time. And also just to kind of reassert that thing that we had an anxiety expressed in the consultation, which was that people were concerned that employers would allocate a peer to somebody, and that might be used as a way to essentially kind of admonish or performance manage somebody. This is not a performance management process, so we want people to be able to feel free to choose their own peer. So it can be done that way, but it doesn't have to be, and in fact we kind of advise that people separate those out a bit more. It's slightly different in academic context because everybody's a peer. That's how academic contexts tend to work, whereas actually in other employing settings it's not necessarily the case.
All the time.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it's in a formal appraisal, sometimes it's an informal discussion, and we get together and we discuss so many other issues, and we all take away things from it and do something about it. It's much easier in that kind of university type informal setting when we actually do it. I know an appraisal is very formal, but it's subject to interpretation. And I was just wondering.
I hate to say it because it dates me, but I was working in a university when peer discussions were first introduced to universities across the country as well, and I remember what that was like. So yeah, you're absolutely right, but the university was adapted in the 20s? Yeah, it is. Oh God.